Thanks to see everybody that's joined early on depending on where you're at globally. It may not be early. Mary Beth, love to have you here. You and I have lots of fun talking about this particular topic, reporting and analytics, but really, the basis is around quality, right? It's not just the reporting components. It's how to make sure meeting quality is fantastic and call quality is fantastic, specific to the phone journey. We're going to be referencing a lot of things today around quality, around reporting, around analytics. But again, it's all around basically getting your environment, your users, into a position where they are ready to go for either further deployment or even optimization. 1 second here. I'm just going to get our presentation rolling. There we go. Mary Beth, how you doing today?
For being here for the first day of Teams Phone Summit. I might have been muted through half of that. I don't know.
Yeah, so maybe everybody quick thumbs up if you can see the slides that we're presenting here. Just want to make sure that PowerPoint Live is cooperating with us today, as it is. We're going to talk a little bit about expectations here. We're going to get into some foundations of quality. Thank you very much for all the thumbs up. It's great to hear. The foundation section, we're just going to set some groundwork. You may be at different points in your team's journey. Some folks might be using some of the tools that we're going to be discussing today. Some folks may not, right? So there's going to be definitely some differences. So we'll start with the foundations. We're going to get into, the basics of the tools that not only are we recommending to you folks as in our audience, but that we use here at Microsoft, right? Our organization uses the same tools that we're going to be talking about today. And then we got 3 different scenarios we're going to go through, which will hopefully make the harbor tour of tools that we have a little bit more real for you and your organization, maybe spark some thoughts and some ideas, some final thoughts, a little bit of a bonus slide with a brand new tool that's freshly announced through some of our engineering partners. And then hopefully time for Q&A. As questions pop up, feel free to use the chat, as Don mentioned. We got some really smart folks that are co-presenting with us that'll be able to answer questions and so forth. So expectations, right? We're going to be learning and building awareness around the tools that we make available to you and your organization. We're going to talk about some insights, and you hopefully walk away with some of the cool insights that you should be looking into. Again, I mentioned the real world scenarios. Throughout the conversation, we're going to, occasionally be referencing the help and offerings that we have from Microsoft and how you can use representatives like the super cool Converged CSMs or CSA resources that are out there, right? That can provide offerings, and then some next steps.
Hey, Jeff, looks like PowerPoint Live is stuck. So could you maybe just stop sharing and then reshare regular?
Right, 1 second here. Dun, dun, dun. Okay. Give me 1 second. I'm going to try to let me give PowerPoint Live another kick.
All right, we'll play a game while you're playing with that, Jeff. I have been troubleshooting voice for a very long time. Long enough to have had one of these. If you know what this is, put it in the chat. If you have one of these, tell me what color it is. They came in a couple of pretty traditional colors, so tell me what that is while this gets loaded. Robert, you are my people. There's a lot of my people in this call. That's very exciting. Green, red, yellow. Who had the blue one? Somebody, blue is pretty traditional too. Thank you, Edith. We're having a big party this weekend, so.
Don, is that working yet, or should I switch to something different?
Yeah, I see it.
That seems to be working. Are you?
Expectations.
There we go. Yep, that looks right.
All right. Mary Beth, I have one of those too, but it's been in a drawer for a very long time.
Yeah, it doesn't see much action these days, but still got it. Still got it.
So as we talk through some of the foundations here, I'm going to launch up a quick little poll just to see if folks are using the acronym QER, stands for Quality of Experience Report, and Power BI, our Power BI tool. So let me stick this poll out there. I just kind of want to see if folks are familiar with the term. And absolutely, next slide, we're going to cover acronyms. So I apologize for having a poll with an acronym in it. But let's see what we got going on out there.
I see error on the poll too. We'll see if it works.
Oh, is it not launching?
We're on the struggle bus today. I see the poll. If you know what QER is and you've ever been in one of my sessions, welcome back. Welcome back. QER stands for anybody? All right, so it's about a 50, not 50-50 split, but there's a good split here. Lots of folks who do know what QER is today. They understand it and they're using it, hopefully. We'll have a little bit for you here today. We've structured this session a little bit differently than some of the ones you might have been in with me. So we're gonna look at some troubleshooting. We're gonna do some proactive stuff. There's some folks who have never seen it before, so this is gonna be exciting for you. And if you're thinking about it, man, after today, I hope today's the day that you decide to take the plunge. It's a great tool.
Hey, Jeff, the presentation stopped, so, and I think you're on mute somehow.
Oh, I got booted, so I'm gonna jump back to
okay.
Doing regular screen share here. Give me 1 second. All right. Well, we just go this route.
Do we have to play another game?
Is that up for everybody?
Yes, it is. Go for it.
All right. Sorry. Yeah. There we go. Okay. So, as we talked about before, right-hand side of the screen, we're going to do our best to try to avoid using acronyms, but in the technical career field and telephony career field, there are a ton of acronyms. So I just wanted to kind of stick this out there for everybody. We know we're going to talk about Teams Admin Center. As Mary Beth mentioned, we have things like the Call Quality Dashboard and Quality Experience Report. Again, we tried to do our best job of not avoiding the use of acronyms, but if anybody needs a quick reference table, I stuck that underneath on the right-hand side, just so that everybody can kind of take a quick look at that. There's even some terms like we've used CSM, myself, Customer Success Manager, Customer Success Account Managers, things like real-time analytics. I just want to leave that over there for everybody. Hopefully that's super helpful, in at least clarifying any of the acronyms that you might see. We also, in this section, kind of included the foundations of what we're going to consider to be administrative roles that are allowing access to the telemetry and the visibility that we provide in the different tools we have. As we leave these documents behind, you'll notice that we have links on all the pages, right? Most folks maybe are familiar with the Teams admin roles themselves that get you access to the data, but we did want to provide kind of a little bit of a chart to help understand that while you might have one or two folks that have Teams administrative roles, there's a number of additional roles that are available to use to create more visibility and more support within your organization using the tools that we have. So obviously we have global administrators and Teams administrators, but take a look at the chart here and follow the link when we provide this for you later on. You're going to see these other roles like Teams Communication Support Engineer, Support Specialist, all have different access to be able to look at the data that we're going to provide either through the Call Quality Dashboard, the Teams Admin Center, or even our Power BI reports. And the reason why we want to call this out is it's super important to make sure that you have more people with more eyes on the tools and the systems that can maybe take action to improve the quality for your organization. So very often I talk to customers who may have, one or two people, right? And that's great to have one or two people, but we encourage you to start to propagate out the roles so that more people can be looking at quality, more people can have access to the data that's out there.
Hey, Jeff, if you can go to the reader, at least the reader, because right now we're in the PowerPoint itself.
Give me 1 second here. When I do this, it's not going to, that's not what you want to see either.
Nope.
I dropped in the chat, if you have been using QER for a while, check out that new Teams Telephony Administrator role. We got a lot of questions and a lot of feedback from folks who needed to narrow down the scope that they were giving people. So if I was giving them global admin, obviously they were having more privileges than they needed. A lot of those other roles had more privileges than they really wanted their folks to have. And so this new Teams Telephony admin role might be the right fit for you. So check that out if you've been using CQD, QER, those kind of things for a while. This could be a good scoping role for your team.
Yep, rolling out February, March timeframe. So if you don't see it yet, hopefully you'll see it any moment. Real quick recap on the kind of tools we're going to be talking about today, right? We talked about call analytics, and we're going to talk about call analytics in Teams, which is really, sometimes you'll see it references real-time analytics. It's near real-time. It's as close as we can really get. It's going to be super cool. If you haven't seen that yet, I've got a little bit of a live demo we're going to do. In the admin center, you also have device health, and I put a little asterisk next to CQD and Teams admin. The asterisk is there really to kind of reference the fact that while CQD is an actual clickable link inside the Teams admin center, it's also really the repository of data, right? So the D for me stands for really more database as opposed to dashboard, but we often reference CQD as the clickable link, but it really is all of the data that we have available to you. And then we're going to lean into Power BI, some of the things that we have, multiple different types of templates. Mary Beth's going to talk about those here in a couple of seconds. There's not just quality, there's phone-specific topic templates, there's MTR-specific templates, and some other things there. And then we have publish options, right, that I'll do a quick a show of when you publish your Power BI to Teams to make it available for other people, right, as opposed to having single users. Then there's the Rooms Pro portal. We're not going to talk much about that today, but wanted to make sure you're aware that for your Teams Rooms needs, we have the Teams Rooms Pro portal. And there's third-party options out there. Obviously not going to be covering the third-party options today, but some folks out there may be using third-party options. A lot on this page. This is more of a takeaway that you guys can talk about in the future as we give you the leave behinds. But most anything that you find in the data tools that we're going to provide relate back to some corrective action that you're going to need to take. And we tried to capture some of the most prioritized corrective actions, I guess I would call them. Maybe they're not corrective. Maybe they're in your planning journey. As you start your journey, you want to make sure you have your right ports open. You want to implement split tunneling, local DNS resolution. Again, not to drain these topics, but to let you know, we have 7 key areas that if you do find problems as you're going through the tools, you may find packet loss or things like that. Likely some of the fix actions are going to be in these 7 topics. Designated quality champion, right? This is a super important part, right? As again, you may have IT administrators. When we talked about those roles, you want to take the opportunity to enhance visibility to more than just a few people in your organization. When we talk about designating quality champions, those are folks that aren't reactive in nature, but can work proactively, right? To look across the organization, look across the different tool sets, look across network blocks, Wi-Fi blocks, things like that, to basically make sure that there's someone's keeping their eye on it. Our goal through this session is to get you away from being reactive and take the opportunity to become more proactive, addressing broad impacts to your organization so that your migration journeys become successful. You can use quality metrics during your migration. If you're just getting into Teams Phone, we want you to start with a current subset of metrics and migrate your users with better metrics than what you started with. Mary Beth, anything you want to add on the quality champion piece? I know that's a close area to your heart.
I do. We like champions at Microsoft quite a bit. I think this is important for several reasons. One is if you, Jeff, became jeff@anothercompany.com, it makes it much easier for your organization and for your replacement to transition into this role because you've already defined this champions network. I personally would put this on my end of year review, whatever that looks like, but having it identified as a role within your organization, having it be sponsored by your executive, they understand this is an important role. You have an opportunity to both provide proactive and reactive support is key. So I highly encourage you to become a Teams champion, whether that's Teams meetings. We've seen customers gamify this and do a little badge down in the corner. If I can get a group of champions within the organization even who find that that Teams and Teams meetings and Teams quality is important. We can kind of gamify that, and they tell a friend and they tell two friends, right? You see how that goes. So think about using this term and identifying a Teams champion for both quality and for user experience.
So we're going to jump into a couple scenarios here. And Mary Beth's going to help us talk through these different scenarios. Our first scenario that we wanted to dive into was something as simple as called getting started, right? So you may just be getting into your team's journey, or you may not be aware of the different tools are out there, or maybe you have someone's talked you into maybe getting access to the QER in Power BI or Quality Experience Report in Power BI, and you've opened it up and you see just a landscape and gobs of data, and you don't really know where to get started, right? So that's kind of this first scenario of how do I get started? What do I do with all this data? What's my best way to navigate everything that's out there? Mary Beth, do you want to cover the different templates that we have to offer today? And apologies for not getting PowerPoint Live working, because you'll see that these are purple links here. We're going to make sure you have access to all these links so that you can click these links, walk through this content, and be able to, kind of download the components that are needed and get them installed.
Yeah, we're hyperlinked out, so we'll get those to you. Lots of great questions in the chat. We'll make sure that those questions get answered. But I'll take one step back. I'm super glad we started the summit today with quality. It's super important that you focus on quality. Nothing else matters if the quality for the end users is terrible. They don't care what kind of shiny objects you put in Teams, what kind of AI or Copilot or anything else, if you have poor quality. So I'm excited that we started with this. There's lots of tools, and we heard that about 40% of you have already looked at QER or even using it daily. Know that there's some different places you can go. You can look in Teams Admin Center or the TAC. There are lots of good reports there, and most of you, I would expect, have started there to look at Teams quality. If you're ready to take that to the next level, because you've seen in Teams Admin Center, maybe every time you look at a call, it always says it's good. It always says it's good. So that's not very helpful to me. I need to know more. And we're going to do another scenario where Jeff's going to talk about how do we dig into that and learn more to investigate poor meeting quality. But Call Quality Dashboard and Power BI were the next kind of evolution. The Call Quality Dashboard web UI still lives out there. So if you're in Teams Admin Center right now and you look over to the left, there's Call Quality Dashboard. It'll take you out to a web UI. That was the original, the OG. Still there, and you can still use that. But we kind of advanced into Power BI. And there we have several templates that you can use. One of them is an example that we're showing on the screen, but there are other templates that Jeff mentioned as well. So what you need to do, what do I need to do? Sounds great, what do I need to do? You need to download the QER report. It's a zip file, so you'll download that. You need to install the Power BI connector for CQD. So I need to connect my machine out to the Microsoft database so that I can pull that data. You can do that on your local machine. You could do that on a virtual machine. Either is acceptable, and there's lots of good instructions out there. I would emphasize to read the help file in the download. I can personally tell you, until now, I have never read a help file in my whole entire life, not even one single time. But there are only a couple of things you need to do to make this work, and if you miss a step, it doesn't work. And the person who wrote it would always refer people back to the README, to the help file. So read the help file, install the Power BI connector, and in a few minutes, you'll be looking at some really robust reports. Power BI is usually available to almost all of our customers. There are some advanced features that you may need Power BI Pro for. We're not going to go into that today necessarily, but most of you should be able to get this going by this afternoon. With the right access, download the template and install the connector. If you've looked at QER, but you may have forgotten MTR reporting, if you're supporting Microsoft Teams Rooms, great tool, great template out there for Teams Rooms. Phone system, if you've got SBCs and you're using Teams Phone with PSTN or direct routing, there's another template out there for you. And then if you've started to deploy Teams Phone and you're using auto attendance and call queues, there is yet another historical report there, because that's becoming more and more important. I need to be able to see where these calls came into, what auto attendant that they hit, who answered it in the call queue, all these kind of things, which we're innovating on, by the way. A lot of that information is in the auto attendant call queue historical reporting.
One thing I'm going to bring up here too, Mary Beth, because I saw a couple comments in chat. It may not address everybody's needs, but we talk about the QER, which is just a very broad landscape of data that gives you meeting health, audio health, transport health, VPN, even end user devices, right? If that's too much data, or if it's really hard to find the thing you're looking for in there, that's why these other report templates are available. So I personally find it super valuable to take advantage of that MTR or the PS report for SBC and PSTN. It loads faster because there's not as much data available and refreshes faster. So anybody that's kind of struggling with the fact that maybe QER is either too much data or it does take an awful long time to load, there are going to be improvements. We always have roadmap activity on there. But maybe take a look at those other templates so that you can get to the data you need a little faster, right? That's something that I found.
Yeah, the nature of this is slow. It does a direct query, so we're constantly pulling information from the database, so it is slow. Pack your patience there. I have heard that if you install it on a virtual machine, it gets quicker, but peel it apart. If I'm looking at meeting rooms, let's look at the meeting room report, or utilize those to give access to the right people. If I've got a team of people who support our meeting rooms, give them the meeting rooms report. They don't need all of the other stuff. So great point. Well, here it is. Here's a great view of that. You want to talk about it?
Yeah, so the thing we're going to kind of cover here, right, is again, we open up that QER, we get access to the CQD data, right, and all of a sudden you're presented with 20 plus tabs of information where to get started, right? And this is really the most important part of this scenario is if you don't know where to get started, we highlighted 4 different topics here that I think are the most important. Whenever I work with a customer, whenever I even troubleshoot things myself, right? The first place that I start is the transport tab. And that's located here. We identified it here on the main starting screen. Why is the transport tab important? Mary Beth, tell us why you like to start with the transport tab.
I like the transport tab. So it talks about TCP versus UDP traffic. So in Teams, UDP is preferred. If it's not available, we will fall back, but almost always your quality is going to be impacted. So it's a quick and easy way to identify where I have TCP traffic that I can take action on, that I can almost immediately improve quality for my users. So I love that one because it's super quick, super actionable, and super impactful.
Next one I got highlighted here, building data. It's a broader topic than just looking in the report around building data. As you get familiar with what's in the CQD database, the building data is an upload activity that you have to populate an Excel template. We upload it into the CQD database, right? And then the reason why building data is important is because it helps you separate the building and network spaces that you own versus external participants or folks that are working from home or people that that just are working in locations that are outside your building. So it gives you a pivot point in the reporting to be able to say, I want to focus on the network space that I have control of and that I can make improvements on versus network space that I may not have control of. So while it's a tab that you can look at, it helps to see and helps you validate, do I have my building file uploaded correctly? So I highlighted that as another important one to look at, because if you go to that building data tab and you're starting to see network blocks that you own, but maybe they're listed as outside your network, then maybe you need to make some updates to your building data tab. So I just think that's another important one to get started with. It helps you sift through the data more quickly, having an accurate building data tab. And then the same goes for the Manage VPN tab, right? We have that highlighted on the lower left-hand side here. Manage VPN is really important for you to be able to see how many users are connecting. Are they connecting through VPN or not? And is it optimized VPN connection? Is it split tunneled, right? So the Manage VPN tab and Building Data tab really are 2 first stop points that I go to whenever I'm evaluating a customer's network.
Yeah, Jeff, I think the real world application there is it really changes the game for you as you're troubleshooting, but that conversation you're having with the network team. So if you're not the network person, if you have to rely on a network team, there's a big difference between me going to them and saying, hey, I think we got network problems in Houston. Because what are they going to tell you? We do not have network problems in Houston because our network is pristine. But if I can go to them and say, hey, I'm seeing a lot of packet loss, a lot of drop packets on the inbound network, on 10.2.12.0 in building 8 out in Houston. Can you take a look at that for me? That's a much different conversation. And so by leveraging building data and manage VPN, you can start to really narrow down what you're looking at and have a better conversation or better troubleshooting yourself when you're dealing with network issues.
Yep. And then lastly, noted in the upper kind of right-hand corner of the slide here, top 10 network, right? That's just the next place that I stop after I've gone through transport, building data, VPN tabs. Then I jump to the top 10 network and I start to dig into which network block that within my own network space is optimized and working healthy, or which network blocks are maybe not working healthy. But when you do your building data tab or building data upload file, you'll be able to map those networks to building names that help you sort and sift through the data more effectively. But looking at top 10 network really just identifies by user, by subnet, and by public subnet, which are the most healthy. So if you're looking for a place to get started, those are the 4 areas that we recommend to start with. And then down at the bottom, just wanted to kind of reference real quick, we've got, as I talked about, the team's admin roles. We encourage you to bring more folks into the fold. Your network team, as Mary Beth just mentioned, they're a critical part of this, right? You may be a team's administrator, but don't have control over Wi-Fi hotspots, firewalls, proxy services, those type of components that are out there. You want to make sure that you leverage those admin roles to bring more folks into the fold. Another quick pro tip, we won't get into it too deep today, although I do have a screenshot that shows you what it looks like. If you get a chance and you get comfortable with your CQD and your Power BI, publish it and pin it into a team so that you have more folks that don't have to pivot and open up that Power BI desktop. You could also set it to automatically refresh. So today, if you're using CQD, right, and you open up the Power BI desktop, right, and then you have to wait for it to refresh. Once you publish it into the Power BI service, you can schedule a refresh up to 8 different times a day so that the Power BI service is going to automatically refresh that data for you. And folks that are looking at it in a Teams pinned tab get fresh data, right? And then, as always, for a next step in the getting started scenarios, if you're having problems or you want to be able to reach out to your Converged CSMs, reach out to your CSAMs. We could look at unified workshop offerings to help either get you stood up on the reports or even help you customize the reports. So, scenario 2. I put this one on here because it's super critical. I don't think there's a customer I've talked to that hasn't given me, called me up and said, hey, guess what? We have an upcoming large meeting or an event, and our corporate communications team or our HR team has said, we want UIT to monitor our event so that we know it's going well, right? Give me a thumbs up or give me a hand if you've ever gotten that question from your organizations that are out there, right? Upcoming meeting, we need to make sure it goes well. I'm going to acknowledge something here. It's super hard to take action during an event that's going underway, right? If you all of a sudden start to get bad quality, you saw me fumbling a little bit earlier because all of a sudden my PowerPoint Live wasn't working. It's super hard to take live action. So the first thing that we kind of called out here is planning. And if you're that IT person that's been contacted to quote unquote monitor or make sure an event's going to go smoothly, the first thing I recommend is making sure you understand who your speakers, presenters, and who's attending, right? Because as we get into this, the next component here that we're going to call it's call analytics or real-time analytics in Teams. The first thing you're going to have to figure out is who am I going to go look for, right? What am I going to go find to start to monitor, right? So it's super critical to know who's speaking and presenting. The other thing that we call out here, again, it's really in a planning section, is the resources, right? Whether it's a virtual event or even just a large meeting, take advantage of the virtual event playbook. Make sure that the presenters or the speakers consider all of the things that make an event go well, right? I'm on the right device. I'm wired versus wireless. I'm not in the basement on an iPad. We know that we've got executives out there that have their device of choice, and you're going to run into that. But the more planning you can do on the front end will help you take advantage of the real-time analytics that I'm about to show you. The screen on the right just gives you a quick screenshot of what real-time analytics in Teams looks like, but I am going to jump to a little bit of a live demonstration here just to give you a little bit more taste of what you can do with Call Analytics in Teams Admin Center. So let me pivot over here to my screen. So again, got the phone call, got a monitor event. I know that Megan Bowen is one of my presenters, so that's the place I might start using real-time analytics in Teams. How do I get there? I'm going to start over here. Users, manage users. We're going to scroll down to Megan because we know she's one of the presenters. We don't need to know all the presenters. We don't need to know all the attendees. We can start with one person. And because I can't show you a live while I'm in the session here, we're going to actually go to a recently recorded, but normally right here in this section, fix meeting issues for users. This view active meetings is actually going to show that Megan is live and in the meeting, and you can click that button to get right to the analytics that are in there. Secondary way to go to that is click on meetings and calls. Make sure that you scroll here because what you're going to see is not only the live meeting or the recent meetings, but then you also have access to past history. A lot of folks end up, the way the screen's laid out, sometimes you don't see that the past history is further down the screen here. I've had a couple folks ask me, I don't see that, right? Keep scrolling down if you ever want to look at something in the past. But let's just assume that we're going to jump into a live and active meeting. We're going to use this one right here. Oh, actually, you know what? I wanted to jump over to this first. Apologies. I had this recorded before. The first thing I wanted to point out is you have a participant count here. And yes, in my example, I only have 6 participants. Likely in your organization, you're going to have a lot more attendees. But the reason why I wanted to point this out, when you click on this link, you're going to get Megan's statistics, her participation in that meeting. If you click on the 6 participants link, we now get a list of everybody that's attending that particular session, and then we get statistics for all of those people. And so while we have some very basic statistics like the attendees, whether they're muted, all of that different information there, scroll over to the right. You're going to get the type of network that they're connected to, what device they're on, and immediately you're able to see, do they have packet loss? Is there a problem? What are their round trips? What's the CPU load? What's the CPU load that Teams is putting on the device? Very, very often, you'll notice here, right, we've got a high CPU load on this particular Surface Pro device. Sometimes it's not the network. Sometimes it's not packet loss. It might just be the fact that the person's multitasking and the Teams client on top of the CPU can't present the meeting well. So I always want to point out that if you click on that little link that shows the 6 participants or 20 participants or 80 or 100, you're going to get a quick table of all of the people that are attending that live meeting. And then from this join time link here, you notice this is in purple. It's actually a clickable link. If you want to drill into the individual user, let's take a look at Adele here. Now we're going to get statistics for that person and their participation in this live meeting. Not going to drain all these different details here. There's tons of things that you can see: audio, video stream quality, even screen sharing stream quality, and a summary table over here that gives you more information about the user. Connectivity type, as Mary Beth talked about, we got UDP, super important. Look for jitter and packet loss on that individual user. Just wanted to show you that's how you can kind of start to dive into an event. And if you're going to attempt to monitor it, at least you can find out, are your presenters doing well? Are your organizers doing well? You're maybe never going to be able to click into all 100, 200, 500 attendees like we have today, but that's a quick way to kind of jump into knowing the user, getting into real-time analytics, and taking a look at what's out there. And again, as I mentioned, CPU and battery details, right? That's another important thing, especially if you've got somebody that's on, an iPad type device or a non-compute device that's on Wi-Fi and maybe has a short battery life. So that's our quick summary on scenario 2, call analytics, and how to get into those real-time analytics that are in there. And if you're ever asked to quote unquote monitor an event. Another quick plug I had here is I talked about that CPU load. This example that I have on the screen is on the left-hand side is an example of real-time analytics monitoring a resource that is presenting a video through screen sharing. And it's a high-def video on YouTube. On the right-hand side is that same video being presented using the YouTube app in Teams. And I just call this out as an example. Important piece to kind of take a quick look at here is when we present, while screen sharing is a lightweight network protocol, YouTube running on somebody's desktop, if it's a high def video running in full screen mode, can take that CPU up to super high utilization. On the right-hand side here, this exact same video, while it had an initial high CPU utilization, dropped down because the YouTube app and team distributes that CPU load to all the attendees. The screen's a little cleaner. You don't have floating windows. Just an example of ways to optimize video presentation. Use the YouTube app in Teams versus sharing your screen and trying to present a high full screen video. Okay, scenario 3, the case of the bad executive meeting. Again, maybe quick raise of hands. How many have gotten the phone call that said, I just got off a meeting and it was terrible? Tell me what went wrong. And I expect to see lots of hands and thumbs up out there, right? Everybody's gotten that particular phone call. Hopefully we'll give you some insights here into how to dive a little bit deeper into how do I go research what absolutely took place, right? And the place that we want to start is using that QER and Power BI. Again, this link here, measurements in CQD. This is dimensions and measurements in CQD. Apologies again, without PowerPoint Live. You can't click on it, but we'll make sure you get a copy of it. That link is going to tell you all the different data points that are available to you to start to look at. But how we recommend going about the case of the bad executive meeting, in that CQD window, we start in the search tab. We identify the particular meeting by ID or UPN, and we're going to drill down into the conference details. So whenever you see that on the search tab, you can right click and do drill through to conference details. And you're going to get a table. I'll show you a little bit more of a screenshot here in a second. You're going to get a table with all sorts of information, right? And now it's how do we sort through and find that needle in the haystack? Mary Beth, as I get transitioned here, anything else you want to add as far as the content around drilling through and getting to that data tab?
I have been furiously reading the chat. Thanks for all of the great questions. I think you're ready. So just keep going. Just keep going.
Okay. All right. As you mentioned earlier, you kind of open up that QER and you first start to look into the good, right? Hey, my network looks good, but I have this particular meeting that supposedly went bad, right? In this particular case, right, this is just a screenshot example. We do have some use of TCP on the overall quality of your environment, right? This does show in this particular example, TCP generally has a worse quality capability than UDP. But if we look good, we want to jump into what happened in that bad meeting, right? And so all of a sudden you right click and you see, wait a minute, I've dove into and I see a whole bunch of packet loss. But what does that really mean? What do I do about packet loss? On the left-hand side of this particular slide, we cover a little bit of how to dive deeper into what ends up happening with packet loss. So while you see the table here has the red and the green, in your CQD, you then can scroll to the right and to the left and get access to all those additional data points, right? So things to look out for when we have users connected through home network or Wi-Fi. Sometimes you'll see something that's called KA consent, right? And that's a keep alive consent, which generally can point to the fact that the user's device and the Wi-Fi access point are either roaming or disconnecting for some unknown reason. It's not a wide area network problem, it's a local area network problem. So it's important to kind of dive into those. What network are they on? What's their Wi-Fi? And what might be contributing to that? Triggers like packet loss and round trip delay. You might see that, or jitter, right? And there's a multitude of different things that can contribute to packet loss and round trip delay. It could be the wide area network, could be the fact that they're on mobile broadband. The QER will identify if a device is connected through a wired network, a wireless network, or a mobile broadband network like Verizon, T-Mobile, any of the different global wireless providers out there. And obviously mobile broadband may not have the throughput quality that a wired or wireless network that's part of your environment. You can take a look at what are they connected on. Is it iOS or Android mobile? In this particular case, our users had good quality on the devices, but we did notice an iOS user dropped from the network, right? And for some reason, their device, likely on mobile broadband, disconnected. As I mentioned before, CPU utilization. We want good CPU utilization. the QER will tell you if there's an insufficient CPU trigger, if the device got disconnected, like I did earlier because of potentially of a CPU issue. And then the other thing to point out is asymmetric congestion, right? You might find that if you notice here, we have a whole section of stream direction, first to second and second to first. What does that mean? Those are the different directions of each stream that are out there, right? We have a second to first. Keep me honest here, Mary Beth. Second to first is network. No, sorry, that's user to network. And first to second is network to user. Each one of those streams that are captured, you might find packet loss on one leg and not the other leg, which may contribute to, I don't know, inbound packet inspection, right? Some of those things can affect inbound packets versus outbound packets. And then, as we put a little tip at the bottom, again, having that building data file updated will help you assist with finding your VPN users and making sure that they're appropriately split tunneled.
So, Jeff, this came from an actual investigation that you were doing, I think. This was something that you were working on with a customer, right?
Absolutely. Yep. It was, it was that experience where I was contacted and they said, hey, everything does look good, but this one meeting went bad. Help us understand what happened. And the most important thing that we started to identify in this particular one is while the reports of the meeting were potentially poor, the reality was there's really only 6 users out of the 17 noted here that had a bad experience. And those 6 users were on home networks or mobile broadband networks that we have less control over. Teams does a fantastic job of automatically adjusting video quality. If there's a bandwidth limitation, then Teams is going to step that video quality down to some extent to make sure that it can still be presented correctly. There's algorithms in there that make sure that happens. But in this particular case, it wasn't a terrible meeting. It was just we had 6 poor attendees. And we found out that those attendees were some were having home Wi-Fi disconnects, some were having mobile broadband congestion.
Yeah, great point. I just want to echo some things that are happening in the chat. I had mentioned just because someone reports the problem doesn't mean that they're causing the problem. So definitely look at the whole meeting holistically to look at the big picture and figure out which users could have been creating a poor experience for all of the attendees. The other thing is that I'm seeing a little bit in the chat, and it's hard to keep up because you guys are asking such great questions, is when I look at the reporting and it says it's poor, that's not help or good. I look at a meeting that's been reported having issues and it says that it was good. If you're looking in Teams Admin Center, you'll often see calls that we say the call was good, but your users are reporting a poor experience. Are they not telling the truth? No, they're absolutely telling you the truth. They had a poor experience and it's our job to go find out why, right? So as you look at Teams Admin Center, know that we do that good, poor classifier based on an average, the average duration of the call. So a real world experience scenario there is I was on a call with Jeff for an hour and for 59 minutes, that call was great. Best call I've ever been on. Network was stable, device was great, everything was wonderful. But for 1 minute, all of a sudden my Wi-Fi flaked out, or insert your favorite network problem. And for that 1 minute, it was the worst call I've ever been on in my whole life. So to me, that was a bad call. For Jeff, it was probably a bad call. He couldn't see my screen, he couldn't hear my voice. I was complaining, it was awful for 1 minute. When you're in Teams Admin Center, it's based on the average. For 59 minutes, call was tip top. We're gonna mark it as good. We're not going to take into consideration that 60 seconds or whatever the small amount of time was where you potentially had something that affected your call. So that's where this comes into play. I need to dig a little bit deeper. I need to take that conference ID or meeting ID, go into Power BI, and start to analyze, peel the onion a little bit to see what was going on in that meeting because my users had a bad experience. Tech's a great place to start. But if it says it's good, then you're going to have to go drill down to the next level.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Mary Beth. That was a really, some real world scenarios that absolutely happen. And numbers are numbers. I love the fact that we still have to dive into, the fact that the overall quality might be good, but that 20 seconds, right? 20 seconds of missed audio could be super critical for an executive. So. Just before we kind of get to the Q&A sessions and see what else we can kind of cover here, I just wanted to talk real quick about how this all plays into, right? How does all this quality stuff and how does this reporting really play into a team's journey, right? This is an example that we tend to use around the activities that take place throughout a migration activity when moving to Teams Phone, right? We have phone workshops that turn into proof of concepts, turn into pilots, then into actual activations and migrations, and then into optimization. I wanted to call out that in those early pilot stages, right, it's important to get these foundational pieces put in place before you get into a migration strategy, because you can use those quality metrics that we pointed out in the CQD and QER as part of your success journey, right? Before you migrate, get a baseline of what does your environment look like. Even if you haven't used Teams Phone in any way, you still have Teams data that's in there, person-to-person calls, chats, existing meetings. There's data available to you and your organization to help you start to set some baseline metrics. As you work your way through the rest of the phone journey, then you can continue to monitor those metrics that we identified, right? And work yourself into an optimization management strategy so that the same metrics can be improved as you exit a migration. And I kind of put stars next to those kind of 4 key areas because we do have workshopping available through Microsoft and Unified, those that have that, right? We have access to that. So if you ever need some assistance or want to get deeper into how to use some of those tools, don't hesitate to reach out to your Converged CSMs or your CSAM and ask them, how can Microsoft potentially help your organization do a better job with quality, do a better job with the CQD, or even customize those CQD reports. I've seen examples of, I want a CQD to monitor or have visibility to all my executives. Or I want to modify this to show me just the bandwidth being utilized by teams. Our CSAs that are out there are fantastic in using these tools. And as I mentioned before, we use the same tools at Microsoft, right? So I'm going to pause for a second. This is a slightly different topic, but this was kind of a bonus that just was recently announced by some counterparts of all of us here at Microsoft. Myself and Mary Beth get to work with some of these super intelligent developer folks. On GitHub, at this moment, there is a new application, Azure application that's being launched that's available for you guys to start working with today called Call Record Insights. While there is quality data that's going to become available with these Call Record Insights, it's really more of an application that does a better job of categorizing all the different places that Microsoft makes data available through Graph API, through CQD, right? We're going to help you correlate that back into a Cosmos database to be able to get access to it. It's fresh off the presses. So I just wanted to give our counterparts in the engineering organization a quick plug. If you get a chance, you can do a search for Call Record Insights in GitHub. The link's at the bottom. Again, you're going to get access to that. But this is kind of a cool new tool that we hope is going to get you better visibility, and we're going to see some cool growth. Again, not necessarily quality focused, but it is just more of a broad landscape of capturing all the different data points that we have to track calls, call records, and even some of those health details. So as I mentioned before, this is just a quick screenshot I wanted to show you of if you get into the CQD and QER and you get to a point where you want to pin that into a team or a channel for your organization to take better advantage of. This is an example screen. We have an IT support channel or a team over here with a quality review channel. And all you need to do is publish each of those QER templates once they're connected to your tenant and they have data. You can publish and pin those to the top of a team so that everybody can get access to the PSTN report, auto attendant and call queue. Apologies for the acronyms I used in this one. It's taken up some screen space, but then right in Teams, you have access to all the different tabs. Again, this is an example of what the PSTN report looks like. Folks don't have to have Power BI desktop. I see one of my customers that are out there. I know he's doing this today. I've seen some questions he's popped into the chat, and I know that their organization is liking this capability. So I just wanted to give you kind of a quick screenshot of what the difference looks like once you pin it into Teams and make it available to other folks. And now we're on to Q&A. Don, I don't know if you maybe give us a hand in capturing anything that might not be.
I don't know, moderators, is there anything specifically we want to call? I mean, there was one actually, and I don't know, I don't think we got it answered. Somebody was asking about how do I go beyond 180 days? That's part of CQD.
It's a tough question. I guess
I know. It's a tough. I mean, especially and I think that the new call record insights kind of gives the idea of what you're going to need to do is that you're going to need to actually grab that data and put it into a local data source so that then you can point to your Power BI reports to that to be able to get that historical data that you're looking for. Yeah. So Greg is also saying you have to export that data beyond 180 days. Yeah. And then have your own data source for that. So yes.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Don, Call Record Insights does give you a little bit more flexibility, right? As it was noted on the quick slide. I know I just threw a quick slide out there, but maybe we can do a follow-up session or provide some more insight. Call Record Insights allows you to store the data in your own Cosmos database inside Azure. So now you have control over the dates and the retention times, which is fantastic. Microsoft has rule sets that are put in place to protect each individual organization and tenant out there, and user identifiable information is only 28 days because of the rule sets that apply to all EUII, not just Teams EUII, but all EUII. So yes, there are some limitations, and to be able to manage that retention further, it's going to be needed to be exported in Stuck or a third-party tool.
Perfect. And then I think there was some, and maybe we just do a quick qualifier. They were noticing some of the additional details that you got when you were looking into the meeting records. And where does Teams Premium fall into that? Do we get more data when we have Teams Premium versus not when it comes to that information from a detail perspective?
The only thing I think this might be referencing, and maybe whoever provided that question, at one point, probably about 6 months, maybe even a little bit further along, real-time analytics and call analytics was a component of an advanced calling package that we had, which has since been moved into, so does not require premium anymore to get to those real-time analytics or the call analytics that I demonstrated, right? That how do I get to the meeting and monitor that good meeting? I did mention in the slides that with Teams Premium, you can do proactive alerting, right? So we can go into audio quality details for a Teams Premium identified user or video quality details and set a proactive alert to drop notifications into a chat. So if you wanted to apply to, let's just say Teams Premium was applied to your executive users, you can then say, I want to be alerted when this executive user joins a meeting or has a phone call or does a video share that maybe has less than lower quality experience, right? And you can set a threshold on that. So that's where premium comes into play, is in that proactive alert, not necessarily in the access to the data. That's been folded in for all the users now to the call analytics or real-time analytics.